Welcome to 30 Days of Photoshop, Day 2, opening, editing, and saving images in Photoshop. Hey there and welcome to Phlearn. My name is Aaron Nace. You can find me on phlearn.com where we make learning fun. And welcome to our special 30 Days of Photoshop series. Now, if you haven't already done so, be sure to sign up for our 30 Days of Photoshop. It's absolutely free. You get an included calendar with a description of everything that we cover, as well as sample images that you can download and a few bonuses. You can sign up right up here. So here in day 2, we're going to show you how to open, edit, and save your images. Now, before we get into Photoshop, we need to cover a few basics. So one of the main advantages of editing your images in Photoshop is to take advantage of what's called non-destructive editing, which means we're never actually working on our original image. So in this video, we're going to show you how to save out a layered file with all your information there so you can go back and edit it at any time. We'll show you how to save out a flattened out JPEG as well, and a PNG for including transparency. In this video, you're going to learn how to swap out a sky, and we're going to remove a tree from the landscape and then show you how to save just that tree with a transparent background. And don't forget, you can download and follow along with these sample images. Just click on the link right down below. So here in Photoshop, first thing we need to do is open up our sample images. So you can do this in a few different ways. You can hit Control or Command O, which will bring up your open dialog. You can go to File and down to Open, or you can just simply double click right here on the background. Now we're going to go ahead and go to our download folder. Here we have 2 sample images, and you can open multiple images at the same time. Just hold down Control or Command and click on your multiple images and go right down here to hit open. So we've opened both of our images. Now I'm going to just make it so I can actually see everything. We're going to just zoom these out a little bit because they take up quite a bit of space. So let's hit Control or Command and hit minus a couple times. I'm going to click on my next image and hit Control or Command and minus that out a couple times as well. Now you might have your images opening as tabs. I'm going to go to Window, down to Arrange, and consolidate all to tabs. So if you see something like this where your images are available in tabs, that's totally okay. If you'd like them to be in windows, which is actually what I prefer, you can simply click and drag them down. There we go. And then I'm going to click and drag this down as well. Now, if you want to make sure that they open in Windows forever moving forward, you can do that in your preferences. Simply go to Photoshop, down to your preferences, and over to Workspace, and then you can check or uncheck Open Document as tabs. Now, I prefer to use standard windows, but if you prefer to use tabs, that's totally cool. It's just a different way of visualizing your images. Now, at this point, I have 2 completely separate photographs open, and I want to combine them into the same document. So I'm going to use my Move tool right up here in the top left. Simply just looks like a couple of different arrows pointing up, down, left, and right. So I'm going to go ahead and take the sky with my Move tool and click and drag from one document to another, and it's going to go ahead and copy that over. I'm going to hit the Delete key and show you a different way of doing it. Instead of clicking right here on your layers, you can actually go to your Layer panel. Now, if you don't see your Layer panel, just go to Window and down to Layers. Just be sure that's checked. And you can actually just click right here in your Layer panel. So I'm going to click and drag from my Layer panel over to my other image. Fantastic. And now with my Move tool, you can see I'm able to move this around. Now, I've got both of these images on this one document, so I don't need this document anymore. I'm going to go ahead and click on the X to close it out. Then I'm going to click on F to make this image full screen. That just takes away any distractions, and I can navigate around my image very easily now. So here are a couple tips for navigating around your images. We're going to hold the space bar, which turns your icon into a little hand. Then you can click and drag and move this anywhere you want in your image. Now you can zoom in and out by holding Control or Command and hit plus to zoom in and minus to zoom out. Or you can use a keyboard shortcut. One of my favorites, hold down space bar and then Control or Command. You're going to see your icon becomes a little magnifying glass. And you can simply click and drag to the left and the right to zoom in and out of your image. There we go. Just hold the space bar to recenter and we're good to go. Now, if all this seems a little bit fast, don't worry, I'm going to continue to explain everything as we move along. Now, earlier we talked about one of the benefits of Photoshop being non-destructive editing. In other words, we don't want to destroy our original photograph. So in this case, we're going to show you how to use layers. We're going to replace the sky and even remove the tree, but we're going to do all of this without destroying the original image. So to start off with, let's go ahead and name our sky. This is this layer. I can use the little eyeball here to turn this off and on. We're just going to double click and call this sky and hit enter. So now let's go ahead and make this invisible. And we're going to click on our background and then make a new layer right above that. So right above our background layer, we have a new layer, and this is where I want to remove the tree. Now, it's actually interesting because the tree is on the background layer, but I'm going to be able to remove it with a new layer simply by covering it with some of what's around the image. In this case, I'm going to take some of the background, and that's what's going to cover up this tree, essentially removing it from the photograph. And to do this, we're going to use the Spot Healing Brush tool. So let's go ahead and zoom in. Again, we're going to hold spacebar and then Control or Command and click and drag to zoom in on this tree. We're going to go right over here to our tools, to our Spot Healing Brush tool. So you can use the keyboard shortcut J for your Spot Healing Brush tool. You can click and hold, and it's right up here at the top. So with our Spot Healing Brush tool, remember every tool that we use in Photoshop has options built in. So right up here at the top, we want to make sure this is set to Content Aware and Sample All Layers. Make sure that's checked. That's what allows us to use this on a new layer. Okay, so now all we have to do is paint right over top of the tree. The Spot Healing Brush tool is used for removing objects from your images. So we're just going to simply paint right over top of the tree. There we go. And I'm just clicking and dragging here using a standard mouse, nothing special. Okay, and we let go and take a look at that. It's not perfect just yet. We'll just do a little bit of cleanup right there. And you can see that looks fantastic. The tree is gone. Now, just like we talked about earlier, this is not a permanent change. We're not destroying the original photograph. Everything we're going to show you is non-destructive. So how do we get this tree back? Well, because I did this on a new layer, look at this. All I have to do is turn this layer off and back on, and our tree appears and reappears. Okay, now let's go ahead and name this layer Tree. Fantastic. The next thing I want to do is replace our sky because the sky in this photograph doesn't have much detail in it. So let's go ahead and turn that sky layer back on. Let's just click on this eyeball right next to the sky layer. And I need to just transform this a little bit because it's a little bit too small. So we're going to hit Control or Command T for transform. Oh, right now I'm on the tree layer, so that's going to try to transform that. Just make sure you clicked on the layer you actually want to transform. So click on the sky, Control or Command T, and we're just going to click right up here on the very top and simply drag this out and hit Enter. That's going to apply our transformation. So it's as large as we need it to be now. We just need to change the way it blends with the image. So we have some dark clouds up here that I want to darken the original sky. So what we're going to do is change our blending mode to darken or multiply, which is going to remove the light areas and just show the dark areas. So we're selected on our sky layer. Here are our blending modes right here. Now we're going to get more into detail in these later on, but for now we're going to click where it says normal and we're going to go down to darken and we'll try multiply. I think multiply actually works really well here. So let's go ahead and click on multiply. Now you can use your move tool to move this anywhere you want it. Anywhere you think it might fit with your image. I think right about there actually looks really good. Now, the only problem being here, it's a bit visible on our foreground as well. So I need to use what's called a layer mask to make it only visible in our background. So let's go ahead and make the sky invisible again. We're just going to turn our little eyeball off, and then I'm going to grab my magic wand tool. So you can hit W for your magic wand tool and select on your background. Now, if you find that it doesn't select enough, you can see in this area it didn't select right up there. All you have to do is bring your tolerance a little bit higher. So I'm going to bring my tolerance to 30 and deselect by going to select and down to deselect, and then try clicking again. Okay, that still didn't select everything. What we can also do is hold the Shift key, which will add to our selection. So I'm going to click right over here and right over here. So now we have the sky as a selection of our image. And with a selection, we can edit just inside that selection. So we're going to go ahead and make our sky layer back visible by clicking on this eyeball. And then, as you can see, our selection is still active. I'm going to click here on our layer mask. And what it's going to do is it's going to basically make everything in the selection visible, and it's going to hide everything else. So let's click on that layer mask. There we go. And you can see it hides everything else. Now, this does look great. I think it's a little bit too dark. So we're just going to take our opacity and we're going to bring it down just a little bit. So here we have a nice mix. We've got a moody sky and we've removed the tree. So at this point, we've done quite a bit to this image. And keep in mind, this is non-destructive. Check this out. All I have to do is simply turn off my sky layer and then turn off this tree layer. And look at this. We're back to our original photograph. So this is what non-destructive editing means. You can get back to the original at any point in time. I could just choose to just do the tree or just the sky, or leave the tree there and have just the sky replaced. So any one of these combinations is very easy to do simply by turning my layers off and on. I didn't make these changes permanently to my background layer. They're additions to my photograph that I can undo at any time, even after I've saved my images. So layers are incredibly important. And when it comes to saving your images out, you always want to make sure that you're saving your images with your layers intact. Now, you also want to save out a JPEG, a flattened version that you can upload on the internet, but make sure you saved out your layered files so you can get back to those at any point in time. And there are two different file formats you're going to be using. One is called a PSD, which stands for Photoshop Document, and the other is a TIFF. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. For simplicity's sake, I recommend starting out with a PSD. So let's go ahead and save this out as a PSD. We're going to go ahead and turn our tree back off. We're going to go to File and down to Save As. Now, I've already got a PSD folder here, so I'm going to try to stay super organized here. And here where it says Format, this is where we choose Photoshop, okay? So we talked about PSD or TIFF, so I could choose Photoshop, which saves out as a PSD, or I can choose TIFF, which will save out as a TIFF. And both of these file formats will include your layers and all of your information. Most of the time, I use Photoshop. So let's choose Photoshop right up here. Now you can see here at the very end of our file name, it's going to say PSD. That looks fantastic, and we're going to go ahead and click Save. All right, it's going to ask us if we want to maximize our compatibility to older versions of Photoshop. We'll say sure. I'll hit OK, and there we go. We've saved this out. So at this point, we've saved out a layered file. Again, a PSD or a layered TIFF will include your layers. So let's go ahead and close this out. I'm going to go to File and down to Close, and it's going to close that document. So we're going to reopen it, but this time, instead of opening the JPEG, which was just those flattened images, we're going to open up the PSD, and it's going to include our layers. So let's go to File and down to Open. We're going to go to our PSD folder. Okay, and here we can see Opening, Editing, and Saving in Photoshop.psd, and click on Open. Now, because we saved this as a PSD, a layered file, we're going to click on F for full screen. Look at this. I have all of my original images there, and I can get back any of this information we want at any point in time. It's incredibly useful. So these PSD or TIFFs, these layered files, these are for you to get back to at any time. Because let's say you remove this tree, but then you edit it and you're like, actually, I kind of like that tree. I want the tree back, but I'm going to keep the sky replacement in there. That looks good. So it gives you a lot of options moving forward, especially as your edits become more and more complex. You'll want to be able to go in and make those changes at any time. Now let's go ahead and show you how to save out as a JPEG that's going to be great for uploading your images to the web. So for this, we're going to go to File and down to Save As. And now we're going to choose our format. We're going to choose JPEG. So JPEG, okay, I'm going to create a new folder in here. So I'm just going to call this JPEG. I prefer to stay very organized. Okay, and you can see here, this is going to end in JPG. There we go. And you can see we have a little option for layers. We do not have an option to check that because JPEGs do not support layers. So layers is not checked in this case, but that's okay because we saved out a PSD also. So we're saving this out as a JPEG. Let's go ahead and hit save there. All right, it's going to ask you how much compression you want. We're just going to choose a large image. That's totally okay. And let's go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. So here is our PSD, which includes our layers. Now let's go to File and down to Open, and we can open up our JPEG. So I'm in my JPEG folder. We're going to open up the JPEG, and you can see there we have it. This is our JPEG. It looks visually identical, but take a look at this. Your JPEG doesn't have any layers. Your PSD does have your layers intact, so you can get back to your original at any point if you want. And your JPEG, everything is baked in. So the JPEG, this is what you're going to upload to social media. This is what you're going to print or use in your portfolio. JPEGs are very important because things like web browsers read JPEGs. Web browsers don't really read PSDs nearly as well. So you have the PSD for yourself, always as a backup, and then you save out the JPEG that you can send to clients or upload to the web. Now let's say we want to make a change to our original PSD and save out another JPEG. Very easy to do. All we need to do is go back to our original PSD. This time I'm going to turn the tree layer on, which hides that tree. Next, we'll go to File, down to Save As. Okay, let's go to our JPEG folder. I'm going to choose my format to be JPEG. And here I'm just going to click on my original file name and go up here and add a 2 at the end. There we go. And go ahead and hit Save. Okay, we'll go ahead and choose 12 as a maximum quality. And then all I have to do is just reopen. We're going to go to our JPEG folder, choose number 2. And here we go. We have this image without a tree in it. And it's a flattened photograph that we can then put online or on social media. Now, the last format we're going to use is called a PNG, and this is used when you want to include transparency in your photograph. So now we're going to show you how to cut the tree out of its background and then save it on a transparent background. This can be incredibly helpful when you create things like logos or icons and you want them to go on a web page without anything behind them. So let's go back to our original PSD. We're going to click on F for full screen and zoom in once more. Now, we're going to turn our sky off and go ahead and turn this tree layer off again because I want to be able to just affect this tree. So let's hold spacebar and then Control or Command and then click and drag to zoom right in. Next, we're going to click on our background and I'm going to go to Select and down to Color Range. So I want to select the color range of this tree. So select and down to Color Range, we're going to use this little eyedropper here to go ahead and select the colors of our tree. Now I'm going to click on the plus eyedropper to add some more to our selection. There we go. And you can see the more that I add, the more my tree gets selected. So in this case, the light areas get selected and the dark areas do not. So we're going to hit OK, and that's going to turn that into a selection. So at this point, what we're going to do, because I have my background selected, I'm going to simply duplicate whatever's in this selection to a new layer. I'm going to do that by hitting Control or Command J. So it takes whatever's in that selection and duplicates it to a new layer. Let's go ahead and turn our background off, okay, and see this is what's on the new layer here, but really I just need the tree. So I'm going to go to my marquee tool here, and we're just going to draw a marquee right around the tree. Let's hold Shift and add to that selection just a little bit. So the tree is now selected. We're going to go to Select and then down to Inverse, which will simply select everything else on this layer. And then I'm going to click on the Delete key. Boom, just gets rid of it. Because again, all I wanted is the tree. So now we can go to Select and down to Deselect or hit Control or Command D. There we go. Let's go ahead and turn our background back on and use our Move tool. So grabbing our Move tool, you can now see, look at this. We have another copy of the tree that I could then put anywhere I want. And because it's completely transparent, you can see right behind it and through all the branches there, I can save this out with a transparent background very easily. We're going to right click on this layer and I'm going to go to Duplicate Layer. Now I'm going to choose to duplicate this to a new document. There we go, and hit OK. So it's going to go to a completely new document with nothing behind it. Now I need to crop this a little bit because it's basically, I don't need all this extra space in here, right? So what we're going to do is hold Control or Command, and I'm going to click right here on the tree, which turns the tree into a selection. Then we're going to go to Image, and I'm going to go down to Crop. So it's going to crop it to my selection. There we go. And deselect by hitting Control or Command D. So what we have now is just a tree on a transparent background. Now I can go ahead and save this out as a PNG. We're going to go to File and down to Save As, and we're going to choose right down here, PNG. So here we are, a PNG. we're going to create a new folder in here called PNG. There we go. And I'm just going to call this tree.png and hit save. There we go. And that looks fantastic. So now, let's say I go ahead and close that out. I can then open this back up. There we go. Let's just minimize that. I can then open up my tree.png. You can see here it is on a transparent background, and then I could put it in any one of these images. See, I just popped it right back there, and look at that. I can add another one over there. There we go. Can transform it. Maybe we'll make it a little bit smaller and put it back over there. And we've added a couple of trees to that original JPEG. They fit perfectly in the image, even with the background, because they're on a completely transparent background. And don't forget our original PSD. If we go back to this original PSD, okay, this has a tree on a transparent background as well. So if you want to just use this, that's totally okay. We'll call this tree part 2. So we have our tree part 2, we have our original tree that we hid, and we have our sky. So for instance, tree part 2, if you just want to move the tree around, you can do this as well. It's very easy to do. Just simply click and drag, move it around. You can put it right above this other layer. Boop, just click and drag right above there, and you're good to go. Now, I know we covered quite a bit in this video, and don't worry if you didn't follow along with everything. We're going to be recovering many of these topics as we move through our 30 days. A lot of the things that might seem foreign now, by the end of the 30 days, you're going to be very comfortable with. But the main point of this video was to show you how to open, edit, and save your documents. So again, I know I've said it a bunch of times. Always be sure you're saving out a layered file. That's going to be a PSD or a TIFF. I recommend using a PSD for simplicity. You want to make sure you're saving out a JPEG. That's what you're going to upload to the internet. And if you need something with a transparent background, that's when you create a PNG. Thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to sign up for our absolutely free 30 Days of Photoshop series. You'll include daily emails as well as sample images where you can download and follow along, and bonus extras that are only available to people who join our 30 Days of Photoshop. This is the perfect way to go from beginner all the way to pro completely free. Thanks again. I'll Phlearn you later. Bye everyone.